unpublished writings of Paramhansa Yogananda, and not surprisingly, I have chosen for today an article he wrote in 1934, December of course, entitled Why Celebrate Christmas? He goes on to talk about things like the social versus the spiritual, and as he practiced in his own life and modeled for us, both have their value. And so, though he makes some critique, if you will, of the mindlessness of Christmas festivities in terms of maybe drunkenness or just giving or eating a lot and so forth, still he honored the joy and the expression of love and kindness through gifts and family gatherings and gatherings of friends and so forth. So the question what he writes is, the question before you is this: are you going to use Christmas just as a romanticism of religious festivity? Or are you going to celebrate Christmas by beholding the Christ love for all races and all living creatures? Are you going to celebrate the coming of Christ by really feeling the universal love and forgiveness, character, renunciation, and devotion of Christ within you? And so he goes on in that vein. He says, I'm not telling you to omit the social factor in connection with the Christmas celebration. What I want is that you should not, like millions who forget God, omit the paramount spiritual factor in your Christmas celebration. I think given this was a public letter, he was being very diplomatic in his language, but nonetheless, after all, Christmas is the birth of Christ, and so the trend towards forgetting that has only increased since he wrote this in 1934. Okay, Christ is only suggested in social festivities, but he is seen and felt as an everlasting, ever-joyous fact in the cradle of meditative ecstasy. So prepare yourself to celebrate Christmas in a real way, as humbly suggested in some of the following. I've extracted, he has 14 different ones and some overlap, so I'm going to just do an extract. The first one I want to read literally. It's longer than the others, but it's first for a good reason, so I think it's appropriate. Prepare your heart so that you may say to those who crucify you daily with unkind actions, words, and lack of gratitude in exchange for the good you give them, Father, teach me to love those, my error-stricken brethren, who know not what they do, so that with my love I may persuade them to better ways of living, and not make them stronger in evil by driving them to it by my own unkindness towards them. So this is worth reflecting. We all have those who crucify us, and so being as it's Christmas, admittedly it's not Easter, but nonetheless the crucifixion was, shall we say, a highlight of the life of Christ. And so a big part of his life this is what he stands for, is how to bear up under our crosses. Okay, the second one is more simple. Love all races as the uniform dwelling place of omnipresent Christ. Now in this regard, I have a story to tell on myself that happened just last night. Some of you may be aware of and enjoying or watching the series called The Chosen, a reenactment of the life of Jesus Christ by a group of actors in America. And I've enjoyed it too. However, I watched their Christmas special, which was a reenactment of the birth of Jesus in that stable. And I found myself confronted with a question I never have really felt to ask myself before, because they cast Joseph, the husband of Mary, in the form of an African American with dreadlocks. And I was offended. I said, well, gee, that isn't the right casting. But then I had to ask myself, well, is that a racial thing? And I don't think it is. I guess it's the theater in me. And since this group of actors is trying to reenact the life of Christ with a sense of immediate realism, how was it really? That's their theme of The Chosen. And I appreciate that. I don't necessarily agree with other parts of the casting, too, I might just add. It's not just Joseph. But it just seemed too self-consciously an affirmation of diversity in these times. And maybe that's right in these times. But I found it distracting. And so I had to ask myself, was that a racial response hidden to my own awareness? I certainly hope not. I certainly can think of no other forms by which it comes out. But there it is. Forgive all your imaginary and real enemies, even as Christ. Well, we already said that already, but the point I wanted to make on this one is the term imaginary. So often we dwell obsessively on the thought that somebody doesn't like us. Some look or glance, some lack of interest or response. And I think most of our self-styled enemies are probably imaginary. Oh, maybe there's one or two once in a while or throughout your life if you're unlucky. But a lot of our thoughts revolve around imaginary slights. Then the next two are basically the same, but very interesting, which is that and this is a core teaching of Yogananda's, one that I have treasured since the very beginning of my life of discipleship, which is that he says that any of the otherwise impersonal but 8 aspects of divine or super consciousness that we can experience in meditation are in fact aspects of God, aspects of our soul made in the image of God. Here he takes it further, so that, for example, what he says is the joy you might experience in meditation, or the love, and I would add the peace, or any of the other aspects, see that, experience that, receive that as Christ, especially now this time of the year when we honor the life of Jesus Christ and the living presence of the Christ consciousness. But what I'm saying, or what I think he's saying, is it may be helpful to personalize the parts of meditation that you do relish, appreciate, and experience. So we'll just call it peace. When you feel that peace, when Jesus reappeared to his disciples after his resurrection, he said, "Peace be unto you." And so peace has always been one of specific aspects attributable to Jesus Christ. So let's say you're feeling very peaceful in meditation. Know that to be the living presence of Christ, of Jesus, if you want to personalize it, of Christ universal, if that's your way of being. Okay. Overcome sorrow-producing temptations of the senses by the self-control of Jesus Christ. Well, that's a little abstract, but develop a taste for all good things, for beautiful music, beautiful art, beautiful friendship that's without the compulsion of the attraction of outer beauty or form or so on. Forgo temporary pleasures and pursue the lasting happiness of the soul. Okay. Now, I'm going to sort of paraphrase some of his things in a way that's meaningful, at least to me, which is, when you look outside, you look at the stars and the heavens, the moons, or you contemplate mentally the vastness of the universe, or you watch a little squirrel, as I am seeing outside my window here, and the squirrels are playful and they always seem so happy, or a leaf or a flower, whatever it might be, the beautiful Christmas lights, all of those things, those are the joy of the living Christ. The Christ consciousness in creation expresses its innate bliss in the celebration of life. Now, right now, spring hasn't come. In fact, we just passed the solstice, but even there on the tree outside my window, I can see little buds. And so you see, all things are contained in the one. And so the joy of living, the joy of life vitality in the body, the joy of the friendship of loved ones in their eyes, for example, or the gifts that they give us, the joy of life. This is the joy of the living Christ. Here's another aspect that I find helpful. Again, it's a sort of a little bit of a spin on my part, but I feel intuitively it's right. He writes, "Behold the omnipresent, ever-living Christ, born anew in your devoted attention." Well, you have to think about that. But when you concentrate calmly, quietly, one-pointedly on anything you're doing, that calm concentration has buried within it, embedded within concentration, is a little bubble of joy. When we focus, when we're still, when we listen, there is beneath the feeling of that act a stream, a bubble, an unending stream of Christ's joy. Okay, here's another interesting one. Yogananda was so creative and so insightful. Exchange spiritual gifts by giving your outstanding good qualities to others who need them. Now, I'm not sure if I had a good quality. I have to think if I do have it. I imagine I must. But anyway, whatever it is, how do I give it to another person? He doesn't really explain that. But you can do that mentally. I have to experiment with that. I've never done that. In some other of his writings, he said, shoot the gun of your smile, shoot the buckshot of your smiles or your joy to sad hearts, or something like that. And I think that's kind of what he means. Give to others mentally, in vibration, through your heart especially, and through your eyes. Qualities, and maybe just in that moment you're feeling joyful. Maybe it's not a quality particular to yourself, but share with others on the level that you have received. Okay. I think that's where I'm going to end on Christmas Eve. And we have tonight, as churches do throughout the world, an evening Christmas Eve service. It's not a family service for children. It's very inward. We call it a candlelight festival of light. Those listening here locally, it is online, streamed at 9 p.m. this evening off our website or our YouTube or our Facebook pages. And for those who live in the area of Bothell and the greater region of Seattle, the bad weather, the snow and ice predicted is not here yet. It's not going to be here yet tonight, so it's perfectly safe to drive and come and enter into the beautiful candlelit atmosphere of the Blue Light Temple. And if you can't come with the physical body that you have, come with your astral body, because it'll be an astral experience. Okay, great souls. I'm going into seclusion next week, a little bit longer, so you won't be hearing from me for a while, but Padma will step up to the plate of taking my turns. The joy of Christ shine within you and guide the footsteps of your life to the lap of his love.